That's what it sounded like in St. Catharines, Ontario, a little over 2 weeks ago. A gala concert in the main Performing Arts Centre Theatre to mark the 100th anniversary year of the historic B'nai Israel Synagogue's current building, although the congregation itself is even older. More than 300 people came out, including many former residents who drove in from Toronto for the concert, which showcased some famous Canadian cantors and the local klezmer band, with a guest vocalist, Laura Revel. The concert was held 100 years to the day when the founders dug the first shovelful of dirt for the new shul in August 1924, and held just after City Council officially designated the synagogue building as an important heritage site. Organizers have been planning the festivities for several years as a way to raise funds to preserve the building. The sanctuary itself needs $75,000 worth of repairs, work that hasn't been done in 50 years, since the St. Catharines Jewish community was at its peak, and pews accommodated 250 people. Today, many of the community's young generation has long since moved away, and membership is about half that size, around 130 to 140 people. The neighborhood isn't great either. It's home to social services agencies whose clients suffer addictions and homelessness. But the congregation's leaders are determined to keep the lights on, whether that will be as a small, functioning center of Jewish life or as a legacy museum.
I can see a day when it will be up to a handful of Jewish people who still identify as Jewish and the city. But if I can make a museum, then maybe I can guarantee that there will be life.
I'm Ellen Besner, and this is what Jewish Canada sounds like for Wednesday, September the 11th, 2024. Welcome to the CJN Daily, a podcast of the Canadian Jewish News.
Is life really miserable for the Jews, or are we just glued to a 24-hour news cycle?
Should we be worried that so many young rabbis are coming out of seminary as anti-Zionists?
And what does Judaism say about polyamory?
If you want answers to these questions, well, we don't have any. But we do love asking them. Each week, tune into Bonjour Chai to hear debates and hot takes by me, Avi Feingold,
And me, Phoebe Maltz-Bovy,
as we sit down with pundits, rabbis, and scholars to talk about the most pressing issues facing Jews in Canada and around the world.
Listen and subscribe to Bonjour Chai at thecjn.ca/bonjour or wherever you get your podcasts.
Howard Slepkov's grandparents moved to St. Catharines in the 1920s from Toronto for better business opportunities. They bought a store to service the workers moving in for the burgeoning industrial boom in car manufacturing and the construction of the fourth Welland Canal for ships on the Great Lakes to bypass Niagara Falls. It wasn't completely smooth sailing for the Jews. The owner of the land where they wanted to build the shul wouldn't sell to Jews. A Christian middleman had to buy it for them. 3 generations later, the building is still being used for services and events, but as in many small towns, it's no longer the only focal point for Jewish life. 2 Chabad centers in the area, including one at Brock University, are attracting younger families for whom traditional synagogue membership doesn't work. Slepkov is 78. He's on his second term as president at the shul. He joins us from St. Catharines, along with 92-year-old Bernice Kaplan, who's lived in the Garden City since she was 18.
It's great to meet you.
Yeah.
It's great being here.
Congratulations on a kickoff to a very exciting next almost a year as your community synagogue celebrates its 100th anniversary. Before we get started, what's your role in this celebration event? Either of you can start.
My role is as a congregant and a previous board member for over 20 years, and I've lived here for 74 years. And I came here when I was 18 years old as a new bride, and this has been born in Toronto, but this has been my home, and this is my home.
So you basically married into one of the founding families of the community, the
I
Kaplan
did.
family.
The Kaplans The Kaplan family have been here for over 100 years. And when I got here, it was a huge, huge family.
They were the congregation, half of them.
Now all that's left of the Kaplan families are 3 Kaplan widows, myself and 2 more of the cousins, and which were very close and were very involved in the shul. It's an incredible place to be, young and old.
And
I'm-
Howard, you guys have known each other for as long as you've been alive, probably, but also you're one of the founding families too.
My grandparents came here in 1920. Like the Kaplans, I think, were already here, most
Yes,
of them.
yes, they
But
were.
my grandfather came. My grandfather said he left Kensington because he couldn't make a living from the Jewish population. Everybody always wanted a discount or a bargain. And he bought a store that was already operating in St. Catharines, and he had 3 children, and those 3 children had children of their own, and I'm one of the 3rd generation.
When was it decided that you guys were going to make this centennial something larger than just like a Shabbos and a Kiddush?
That was my intention all along. I wrote a book before the pandemic, and my book was called The Future in Doubt. And I had always worried about what would happen after the generation that's still alive disappeared, and what would happen to the synagogue. In my mind, the synagogue is my heritage, and I have to protect my heritage. And I saw a beautiful building that I knew everybody thought was filled with things that needed to be saved and protected. And I saw a community that represents the finest in community life, Jewish community life in small towns, where everybody pulls together in sickness and in health, in good and bad times. And I had decided as president of the board that we would make it a year's events, because it also provided us with an opportunity to raise money, to fundraise in a way that we could secure the future of the foundation and secure the future of the synagogue. And so far, we're off to a good start.
How much do you need to raise to keep the synagogue lights on for generations?
Well, we have a foundation, but our sanctuary has not been repaired and refurbished in over 50 years. And there are some major cracks. When our synagogue was designed, it had 2 domes at the corners. If you've seen a picture, and Bernice will remember what that looked like. And in 1960, the rabbi then that we had, Rabbi Israel Friedman, he didn't want those domes. So they were removed. And unfortunately, one of the corners where the dome was removed was not sealed properly. And we've had a slow seepage in the walls. So the walls are damaged and they need repair and fixing up. And so we have about $75,000 we want to invest in the sanctuary, new carpets, fix up the ceiling. We have a beautiful Star of David, and just last Shabbat, some of the ceiling fell down because of the dampness, so that needs to be repaired. And we have beautiful stained glass windows on 2 sides of the sanctuary. And when they built the Jewish Community Center, they covered up those beautiful stained glass windows, and we actually have enough stained glass stored and in places where it won't be missed, that we can redo those windows and they'll look like they did when my grandparents and Bernice's in-laws were alive.
Okay, let's talk a bit about the heritage designation.
We have been declared a historical site by the city of St. Catharines just last Monday night.
I mean,
And
that's
that's,
in perpetuity, right?
yes, that's in
Ah,
perpetuity. 95% of the membership supported the designation, and they're all thrilled that we now can say we have been designated. And your listeners might be interested. The province of Ontario specifies 9 criteria. You only need to meet 2 of the criteria. We met 8. So that says something about the pride with which the synagogue was built 100 years ago. That there's so much of what they built now stands as of historical significance.
what made me, I don't know, laugh or not laugh, chuckle, I guess, was the fact that it's built on Church Street. How has that whole thing been a running theme, joke, I don't know, through the community all these years? Can you
It
tell
is-
me about that, Bernice?
Well, it is rather a joke, and Church Street is also filled with several churches, but I don't know how the site was chosen initially. Of course, it was, before I was born, but not only is it on Church Street, but it is across from the Salvation Army. So we're covered on all sides.
The way in which the site was chosen was that before 1924, that was where all the Jewish people lived in the radius, and draw a circle, and all the Jewish people lived within walking distance of the shul. That was just the way the city evolved. It rented that house. The building that the shul, that the congregation used, soon was not big enough for the population that was coming. There was one of the more prominent members of the community passed away, left money, enough money that the congregation could buy that land and that house. But it was owned by a non-Jew, and he wouldn't sell. So one of the members of the congregation went to a friend who bought the corner for us, and then transferred ownership to the congregation. And then the congregation moved the house back on the property, and were able to start building at the front.
I want to ask a bit about when you were married and making your family, Bernice, in St. Catharines. What did the shul mean to you, and how has that changed to today?
The shul meant our social life in many regards. There were a lot of social events held, spaghetti dinners and concerts and everything that went on in the Jewish community went on in the shul. And at that time there was a woman's b'nai b'rith and a men's b'nai b'rith. There was a hadassah. There was a sisterhood. There was a men's club. There was a men's b'nai b'rith. You got to meet people there. In those days, people will laugh now, but I was just talking about it to a friend. If we had a supper meeting, it was such a big thing because people didn't live the fast lives that they live now, eating out and being out, and women were not working at that time. And slowly women started going to work, going to university, and it got harder to maintain those organizations. And unfortunately now there is not one of them surviving. And it's sad, but there are other things. We have a wonderful Yiddish club, unbelievably. And there are other activities. We have a gorgeous library. And in the early days, things revolved around the shul for the children as well. At one time we had a huge Hebrew school.
100 students
We
at its
had
peak.
we had 2 teachers and a rabbi. Those were the old days. Now things are totally different. Kids are learning online. So I've seen the whole thing evolve from a really, really active community, but those were the needs at the time. Now, life is different, but the shul is very important. They have a wonderful nucleus who comes every Shabbat. They have a Thursday morning service. At one time, there was a minyan every single morning and every single night if they could get them together. So, religiously, things have changed, but the spirit is there and the people that love it are there. And I'm a senior, and I'm often asked, even today, someone asked me, how come you didn't move to Toronto? Well, my life is here. This is my home. Unfortunately, my children live elsewhere, but this is my life, my friends, my shul, my spirit, my everything. And I'm not alone in that thinking.
No.
Now, I heard that there was a breakaway shul for a while in 1972, Temple Tikva. Is that still there? No.
No.
Temple Tikva, they started to use the shul in Niagara Falls, and then it became more complicated because, like just about everywhere else, we also had Chabad.
So I want to ask you about that. When Chabad moved on to Brock, the Zaltzman family, and they set up the Roar, how did that impact your membership, your attendance?
I would say that it didn't affect the attendance much because the community was that strong, and we just kept rolling along. The way in which it has affected is that people that come to St. Catharines move to St. Catharines where they might be intermarried, they might not be intermarried, but they're not interested in belonging to a synagogue. And Chabad was there, and Chabad was free, and the Zaltzman family was very good at outreach and providing. They very good at fundraising. They've got all kinds of money. They had a big Lag BaOmer picnic, a big program for Hanukkah, and we couldn't compete with that.
But at Brock, it's a different story because we did not have the manpower to take care of, say, a Hillel. And we did have a Hillel for many years, but we really didn't have the manpower or the lady power. And Chabad is very strong. They're very aggressive. And they really took over. They made sure that they were the official Jewish religious organization. And they do provide a Shabbos meal for a Jewish kid. For that, it's wonderful.
I wish that we didn't have to compete with them. When a young couple comes with two kids, they come to shul and they go, well, how are my kids going to make friends? And what am I going to do with the kids?
Did you guys apply for ever or get, or are you applying for SIP grants or Ontario Security Grants? Did you get any of that?
Yes, we've applied each time. We've used the money to pay for the security so that we don't have to pay for it. If you look at old pictures, there's no fence. But during the pandemic, we had a lot of, because we're close to the Salvation Army, we have a homeless population that lives in the same area. We had people that were defecating on the property and urinating on the property. Even now, even though we have the fence within a block of the synagogue, you can always find somebody shooting up. It's a sad state of affairs, but we're not the only ones. It's happening all over. We're diagonally across from a church that has activities for the homeless people. So naturally, they gather close.
It's a magnet. It's a magnet, and it's a sign of the times. And we are downtown, but I can assure you that the spirit is strong. I'm not physically able to go to shul at the moment, but they have regular people going. They don't mind. They weave their way through the junkies, and they're loyal, and it's a beautiful community. Nothing's perfect, but having lived here for 74 years, I've kind of seen it all. And please God, I hope to spend my last breath here.
Yes,
and,
you will, Bernice.
Poo, poo, poo. Howard, when you were interviewed in the local paper, you mentioned something about how that you think that, this is your legacy. The synagogue itself may not be open in the future, but you want to make sure that the place will be a museum. What makes you say that?
I'm 78, believe it or not. And I won't go on forever either. But in order to keep a shul open and to keep it vibrant, you need to have young people who are taking over. And I am part of the young generation, Bernice's children's generation, that became the leadership and raised the dues and looked after the building. After we're gone, the number of people to carry on will be increasingly fewer. And if you look at the trajectory, I can envisage a time when there won't be too many people interested in a shul. But we have a foundation, and the foundation will help to keep the doors open. And if I want to see, I'm aiming to have a museum in St. Catharines the same way they have a museum in St. John. My wife is a St. Johner. And we were recently at that museum. It gets me.
It's a wonderful, optimistic thought.
Yeah, but it gets me for Klimt because I don't want to think about a time
When there's no shul.
when there's no shul. But look at where the Jewish population goes. Where does everybody go? St. John, I tell everybody, they raise their kids to grow up and go away to university and explore the world. And that's what they did. But when they explored the world, they weren't interested. Our kids are the same. They weren't interested in coming back to tiny little St. Catharines.
Good luck. And we'll be following it.
Good, we'll be
Thanks
looking
for being on the
forward.
CJN Daily, you guys. And that's what Jewish Canada sounds like for this episode of the CJN Daily. If you would like to learn more about the centennial celebrations planned for the next 10 months, including a Shabbaton birthday party in June, or to find out how to donate to the synagogue's foundation, we put all those links in our show notes. Apologies for my voice. I've been down with the flu all week. Our show is produced by Zachary Judah Kaufman. Our executive producer is Michael Freeman, and our music is by Dov Beck-Levine. Thanks so much for listening to the CJN Daily.